The ceremonial garments weighed on Lysithia's shoulders like the fate she was determined to escape. Through the stained glass windows of the grand preparation chamber, 3 moons hung in Vexillion's lilac sky, an auspicious sign for royal unions, according to tradition. A tradition she was about to shatter into a million glittering fragments. "Your Radiance, please remain still," urged her handmaiden, Elira, as she attempted to secure the final jeweled pins into Lysithia's crest of iridescent feathers. "The sovereign matriarch will arrive any moment to complete the binding rituals." Lysithia's 4-fingered hands trembled beneath the ornate sleeves of her matrimonial robes. Beneath her pearlescent skin, her pulse chambers worked overtime, pumping cerulean blood through her slender frame at dangerous speeds. This was her only chance. "Forgive me," she whispered, more to herself than to loyal Elira. With a swift motion, Lysithia activated the miniature phase shifter concealed in her palm, a forbidden technology smuggled to her by the underground resistance. The device hummed against her skin, and before Elira could react, the princess's form rippled like water disturbed by a stone, then vanished entirely. Shouts of alarm echoed through the ceremonial tower as Lysithia, now invisible to all monitoring systems, slipped through corridors she had memorized since childhood. Her destination, the diplomatic hangar where vessels from across the galaxy were permitted temporary sanctuary under ancient laws of hospitality. She had exactly 8 minutes before the phase shifter would fail. 8 minutes to reach a ship. Any ship that could carry her away from her impending marriage to Emperor Drozax of the Kagran Dominion. A tyrant 3 times her age, whose 6 previous spouses had all met with mysterious ends once they had produced heirs. The diplomatic hangar buzzed with activity as emissaries from a dozen star systems prepared for their departure, following what should have been her wedding feast. Lysithia's eyes darted between vessels, searching for one small enough to pilot alone yet capable of outrunning the inevitable pursuit. That's when she spotted it. An unusual craft unlike the sleek, crystalline ships of her people or the enormous battle cruisers of the Kagran. This vessel was smaller, oddly shaped, with unexpected angles and what appeared to be actual metal plating. Primitive by Vexillian standards, yet something about it called to her. As she approached, her phase shifter sputtered, its energy nearly depleted. A figure emerged from beneath the craft. A bipedal being with strange, flat features and curiously rounded ears. The creature wore no ceremonial armor, no status identifiers, just practical clothing smudged with mechanical fluids. The being looked up directly at her. Impossible. No one should be able to perceive her while phase shifted. "I can see your heat signature clear as day through my work goggles," the creature said in roughly translated galactic standard. "You're either a saboteur or someone in a whole lot of trouble. Either way, you're standing where I need to replace." A fuel coupling. The phase shifter failed completely, revealing Lysithia in her full ceremonial splendor. Alarms immediately blared throughout the hangar as security systems detected an unauthorized royal presence. The being's eyes widened, strangely expressive eyes for a species she couldn't immediately identify. "Please," Lysithia said, dignity crumbling as desperation took hold. "They will force me to marry a monster. I seek asylum." The being glanced at the approaching security drones, then back at Lysithia. Without hesitation, a decision was made that would change the course of galactic history. "Get in," said the human, gesturing toward the ship's entry hatch. "Name's Orion Kavari, independent cargo hauler. Hope you don't mind a bumpy ride." Lysithia had never touched a non-royal being in her life, yet without hesitation, she grasped the rough 5-fingered hand extended toward her and stepped into exile. Orion's ship, the perihelion, lurched violently as it burst from Vexillian atmosphere, pursued by 3 royal interceptors. In the co-pilot's seat, Lysithia clutched the harness straps with trembling hands, her feathered crest flattened against her head in terror. "Your vessel cannot possibly outrun Vexillian military crafts," she stated, trying to keep her triple-toned voice steady. "Their quantum drives can't catch what they can't track," Orion interrupted. fingers dancing across manual controls that seemed archaic compared to the neural interfaces Lysithea was accustomed to. Human ingenuity beats fancy tech sometimes. Lysithea stared at the being, human, beside her. She had studied thousands of species during her royal education, but humans had received only passing mention. A relatively new spacefaring race from a backwater system, considered unimportant in galactic politics. "You're from Earth," she said, recalling the briefing documents. "Your species only achieved faster-than-light travel 70 years ago." Orion flashed a grin that displayed blunt, uniform teeth. "And yet here I am, flying circles around your Royal Navy." As if to emphasize the point, Orion executed a maneuver that seemed to defy several laws of physics. The perihelion dropped into the shadow of Vexillion's largest moon, then skimmed its surface at dangerous proximity. The pursuing ships programmed to follow safety protocols couldn't match the reckless trajectory. "What you just did." Lysithea's eyes widened. "That's not possible." "Welcome to Lesson 1 about humans, Your Highness. We specialize in the impossible." A console chimed and Orion nodded with satisfaction. "They lost our signature. Standard procedure says they'll establish a perimeter assuming we're still in system. Another series of control adjustments. But we'll be halfway to the Carina Nebula by then." The ship shuddered as it entered what Orion called slip space, apparently a human variation on conventional FTL technology. Lysithea watched, fascinated, as stars stretched into luminous streaks outside the viewport. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. "You risk interstellar incident, possibly even war." Orion's expression grew serious. "Where I come from, forcing someone to marry against their will is considered barbaric. Doesn't matter if you've got feathers or scales or plain skin like mine. My marriage would have secured an alliance between your empire and what my intel says is basically a slaver syndicate pretending to be a legitimate government," Orion finished. "The Kagran Dominion's reputation extends even to Earth's intelligence networks." Lysithea felt a strange sensation, her inner membranes moistening her eyes. An involuntary reaction she'd been trained since childhood to suppress as unroyal. "I was to be the 6th royal spouse still living," she whispered, "all confined to separate palaces, permitted to see their offspring only on ceremonial occasions." Orion's face contorted in what Lysithea recognized as disgust. "Yeah, that's not happening on my watch." A silence fell between them as the perihelion continued its journey through slipspace. Lysithea studied the human surreptitiously. Orion appeared physically unimpressive by Vexillion standards. No bioluminescent features, no reflective skin, no crest or sensory appendages. And yet there was something compelling about the human's direct gaze, the confident movements, the casual defiance of authority. "I cannot return to Vexillion space," Lysithea said finally. "Where will you take me?" "I've got a delivery run to complete at Harrington Station. It's an independent trading post, no extradition treaties, no questions asked. We can figure out your next steps from there." Orion hesitated. "But first might want to change out of that getup. There's spare clothes in the locker behind you. Nothing fancy, but won't scream runaway royalty either." Lysithea looked down at her ceremonial robes, encrusted with gems worth more than most planetary treasuries. For the first time in her life, she would wear garments not specifically designed for her status. The thought was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating. "Thank you, Orion of Earth," she said formally. "I am in your debt." The human's response was simply a casual two-fingered salute. "Welcome to life among the commoners, Princess. It's messy, but it's free." Harrington Station loomed before them, a massive structure cobbled together from decommissioned spacecraft, shipping containers, and makeshift modules. Unlike the elegant architectural biomatter of Vexillion construction, this human-operated trading post was a monument to pragmatic improvisation. "Not exactly the royal quarters you're used to," Orion commented as they approached the docking bay. Lysithea, now dressed in oversized human clothing with her feathered crest tucked beneath a cap, watched with fascination. "It's extraordinary. Each segment tells a story of its origin and purpose. That's one way to describe this junkyard. Orion guided the perihelion toward their assigned dock. Remember, you're my new mechanics assistant. Name's Lyra. Don't volunteer information, don't make eye contact with station security, and try not to look too regal. The princess, temporarily demoted to mechanics assistant, nodded solemnly. I have observed your movements and speech patterns. I believe I can approximate human behaviors convincingly. Orion suppressed a smile. Maybe dial back the formal language about 10 notches. Got it, Lysithea replied, mimicking Orion's casual tone. This adequate? We'll work on it. Docking procedures completed smoothly, but as they prepared to disembark, the perihelion's communication system crackled to life. Attention all vessels and personnel, announced a station-wide broadcast. Be advised, Vexillian authorities have issued an interstellar alert regarding the kidnapping of Royal Sovereign Lysithea Numenar Vrexus by unknown assailants. The princess is described as having pearlescent skin and an azure feather crest. Any information leading to her safe return will be rewarded with 1 million galactic credits. Orion and Lysithea exchanged alarmed glances. Kidnapping? Lysithea's triple-toned voice quavered with indignation. I specifically told Lyra I was leaving voluntarily. Power structures rewrite narratives, Orion said grimly. Makes for better propaganda if you're a victim rather than a deserter. The reward, Lysithea whispered. Every mercenary and bounty hunter in 3 sectors will be searching for me. Orion nodded soberly, and the station will be crawling with them within hours. We need supplies and information, then we're gone. They exited the perihelion cautiously. Harrington Station buzzed with the usual activity, traders arguing over prices, maintenance crews repairing eternally broken systems, species from dozens of worlds mingling in the controlled chaos that defined human-operated facilities. Lysithea stayed close to Orion, overwhelmed by the cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights. Nothing in her royal education had prepared her for the raw, unfiltered experience of a frontier trading post. First stop, Maddox's supply depot, Orion murmured. Then information broker. Keep your head down. They navigated through crowded corridors, Lysithea trying her best to mimic Orion's confident stride rather than the measured glide she'd been taught since childhood. They had almost reached the supply depot when a heavy hand landed on Orion's shoulder. Kavari, boomed a voice that seemed to originate from somewhere near the ceiling. Lysithea looked up to see an enormous being with crimson skin and multiple eye stalks, a Dravarian enforcer, wearing the insignia of station security. Chief Drex, Orion responded with forced casualness. Been a while. 3 cycles since you outbid me on that Centaurian whiskey shipment, the massive alien rumbled. His multiple eyes swiveled to examine Lysithea, who immediately stared at the floor. New crew member? Mechanics assistant. Taking on bigger jobs these days. Several tense seconds passed as the security chief's eyes continued to study Lysithea. Then, mercifully, he turned back to Orion. Watch yourself, Kavari. Stations, about to be swarming with bounty hunters chasing that Vexillian princess. Messy business. Would hate to see you caught in the crossfire over a reward like that. Appreciate the warning, Orion replied carefully. We're just here for supplies and gone. The security chief nodded and continued his patrol. Lysithea released, a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her secondary respiratory system kicking in to compensate for the oxygen debt. That was not the place to discuss it. Orion cut her off with a meaningful look. They completed their supply run in tense silence, then slipped into a darker section of the station where flickering lights and exposed conduits signaled they'd left the main commercial areas behind. Where are we going? Lysithea whispered. To see an old friend. Someone who might know why your kidnapping is worth such an astronomical reward. Even for royalty, 1 million credits is excessive. They stopped before a nondescript door marked, only with a symbol Lysithea didn't recognize. Orion knocked in a specific pattern. The door slid open to reveal a dimly lit room filled with holographic displays and data terminals. Seated amidst this technological nest was a being that appeared almost human, except for the subtle shimmer of their skin and eyes that reflected light, like a feline's. Orion Kavari, the being said, with a voice like silk over gravel. And a guest, with a price on her head that's causing quite the stir in my information networks. Rez, Orion acknowledged the mysterious information broker with a nod. We need to know what we're really dealing with. The being called Rez gestured for them to sit on the only 2 chairs not occupied by data equipment. Their reflective eyes studied Lysithea with unsettling intensity. Remove your cap, your radiance, Rez said softly. Your secret is safe here. Hesitantly, Lysithea complied, releasing her azure feather crest from its confinement. It rose and fanned naturally, displaying iridescent patterns that marked her royal lineage. Magnificent, Rez murmured. The genetic markers of the Numenor dynasty are unmistakable. They turned to a terminal, fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Your disappearance has created quite the interstellar incident. The official story claims human terrorists abducted you to destabilize the royal succession. Terrorists? Orion exclaimed. That's a dangerous escalation from simple kidnapping. Rez nodded grimly. Several human trading vessels have already been detained in Vexillian space for inspection. Diplomatic channels between Earth Central Administration and the Vexillian sovereignty are deteriorating rapidly. Lysithea's crest flattened in distress. This is not what I intended. I sought only my own freedom, not conflict between our peoples. Intent rarely matters in galactic politics, Princess, Rez replied. But there's more to this situation than appears on the surface. Another series of commands brought up classified documents on the main display. Your betrothed, Emperor Drozax, arrived for the ceremony with an unusually large military escort. 17 warships positioned strategically throughout your system. Orion leaned forward. An invasion force disguised as a wedding party? Precisely. And there's this. Rez displayed what appeared to be medical data. Genetic profiles of Drozax's previous spouses, obtained at great risk from my sources. All 6 were systematically harvested for specific genetic markers present in their bloodlines. Lysithea stared at the complex genetic diagrams. Harvested? I don't understand. The Kagran are pursuing a genetic engineering project of massive scale, Rez explained. Each royal spouse was selected for specific genetic traits. Once these traits were extracted and offspring secured, the spouses became obsolete. They're dead. Orion translated bluntly. Not exactly, Rez corrected. They exist in stasis, their bodies continuously harvested for genetic material and certain biochemical compounds. A living death. Lysithea swayed in her seat, nausea washing over her. And I would have been next. But why? What could my genetics possibly offer? Rez's expression grew more serious. Your lineage possesses something unique, the only known naturally occurring resistance to the Void Plague. A heavy silence fell across the room. The Void Plague, a mysterious disease that had devastated multiple civilizations over the millennia, appearing without warning and disappearing just as mysteriously. Its last outbreak 3 centuries ago had nearly wiped out the Kagran before suddenly abating. They believe the Void Plague will return, Orion realized aloud. And they want to engineer resistance into their population using Vexillian royal genes. Not just resistance, Rez corrected. Control. My sources indicate the Kagran have isolated samples of the original pathogen. Imagine, immunity for their forces while deploying the plague against enemies. Lysithea's luminescent skin paled to an almost ghostly white. This cannot be permitted. My escape is no longer merely a personal matter. It never was, Rez said softly. The bounty on you is extraordinary, because what flows in your veins could determine the future balance of power in this quadrant. Orion stood abruptly. We need to get this information to Earth Central immediately, and Lysithea needs protection beyond what I can provide on the perihelion. Rez held up a hand. Station security monitors have detected multiple Kagran operatives, already aboard Harrington. They're methodically searching vessel by vessel. A small alarm chimed from one of the terminals. Including yours, As we speak. Orion cursed in what Lysithea assumed was a human dialect, not translated by her implant. We have an alternative exit, Rez continued, pressing a section of wall that slid away to reveal a narrow corridor. It leads to a private hangar. Take my personal shuttle. It's registered under diplomatic credentials that even the Kagran won't risk violating. Why help us? Lysithea asked, her triple-toned voice barely above a whisper. Rez's reflective eyes seemed to look through her rather than at her. Because I was there, 3 centuries ago, when the Void Plague ravaged my homeworld. I am the last of my kind, preserved by technologies your scientists would consider impossible. I will not allow that weapon to be unleashed again. Understanding dawned on Lysithea. Rez was far older than their appearance suggested, a survivor of a forgotten catastrophe. Where should we go? Orion asked. Earth is the obvious destination, but they'll be watching all routes there. Not Earth, Rez replied, handing Orion a data crystal. Follow these coordinates. It leads to a research facility operating outside official channels. Scientists there have been studying the Void Plague for generations. They must be warned, and they might be your only hope of neutralizing the threat your genetics pose. The distant sound of weapons fire echoed through the station's communication system. The Kagran are becoming less subtle, Rez observed. Go, now. Rez's shuttle, the Obsidian Whisper, sliced through space with a silence and speed that the perihelion could never match. Lysithea marveled at the vessel's interior, an elegant fusion of technologies from civilizations she recognized and some she did not. This craft must be ancient, she murmured, running her four-fingered hand over a console inscribed with symbols from a language extinct for millennia. And temperamental, Orion added, wrestling with controls that responded differently than any human-designed system. Responds more to intention than direct input, almost like it's alive. They had escaped Harrington Station moments before Kagran forces overwhelmed station security. The diplomatic transponder had indeed protected them from direct confrontation, but 6 Kagran pursuit vessels formed a distant escort, tracking them while carefully maintaining the minimum distance required by interstellar diplomatic protocols. They won't attack, Lysithea observed, but they'll follow us to our destination. Orion nodded grimly, which means we can't actually go to the coordinates Rez provided. Not directly, anyway. The data crystal pulsed with a soft blue light in the shuttle's reader. According to the navigational data, their destination was a remote system near the boundary between the Orion and Perseus arms of the galaxy, truly on the edge of known space. We need allies, Orion said, studying the long-range scanner, and I think I know where to find them. With a series of commands that seemed more like suggestions to the responsive ship, Orion changed their course toward a nearby asteroid field. The Kagran pursuers adjusted accordingly, maintaining their vigilant formation. The Hephaestus Collective, Orion explained as they approached what appeared to be simply a larger-than-average asteroid. Independent engineers and shipwrights, officially neutral in galactic politics but with a strong distaste for anyone who disrupts free trade, like the Kagran. As they drew closer, the asteroid's surface seemed to shift and ripple, revealing carefully disguised hangar doors that opened to admit their vessel. They're expecting us? Lysithea asked, surprised. Rez has connections everywhere. I sent a coded transmission while you were resting. The hangar enveloped them in protective darkness, the doors sealing shut behind their vessel. When they emerged from the Obsidian Whisper, they were greeted by a diverse assembly of beings, some humanoid, others decidedly not, all bearing the distinctive mechanized implants that marked members of the Hephaestus Collective. A towering figure stepped forward, at least 7 feet tall, with skin like burnished copper and eyes that glowed with cybernetic enhancement. Orion Kavari, the being rumbled, voice modulated through what appeared to be a mechanical vocoder. Still flying into trouble, I see. Valerian, Orion greeted the imposing figure with surprising warmth. Still hiding in rocks while the galaxy burns? The copper-skinned giant's faceplates shifted in what might have been a smile. Neutrality has served us well. Their glowing gaze shifted to Lysithea. Though perhaps today is a day for taking, sides. Inside a chamber carved from the asteroid's core and lined with technology beyond even Vexillian understanding, Lysithea told her story to the assembled collective leadership. She explained her escape, the genetic harvesting program, and the terrible possibility of the void plague being weaponized. The Kagran ships wait beyond our asteroid field, Valerian confirmed after she finished. They know the princess is here. We need to reach the research facility, Orion insisted. Before the Kagran realize its significance, an engineer with tentacles instead of arms manipulated a holographic display. The Kagran pursuit vessels are too numerous to engage directly. Even with our advanced technology, we cannot guarantee safe passage. Then we need a diversion, Orion suggested. Valerian nodded slowly. Perhaps more than a diversion. The situation you describe threatens more than just Vexillian-human relations. If the Kagran truly possess samples of the void plague, then all life in this quadrant is at risk, finished another collective member. Lysithea stepped forward, her royal training asserting itself naturally. I propose an alliance, not between governments or empires, but between individuals who recognize this threat, human ingenuity, Vexillian resources, and collective technology. You speak of resources, Valerian noted. Yet you are in exile from your people. Lysithea's feathered crest raised in determination. I am still Lysithea Numenar Vrexus. There are those within the Vexillian military who would heed my call regardless of the official narrative. The collective members exchanged glances, communicating through subtle cybernetic signals. If what you say about the void plague is true, Valerian finally said, then the collective will aid you, not for political gain, but for survival. Over the next several hours, a daring plan took shape. The collective would provide a fleet of unmanned decoy vessels, each programmed to emit the distinctive genetic signature that the Kagran were undoubtedly tracking. These would scatter in different directions, forcing the pursuit vessels to divide their attention. Meanwhile, a collective engineer would temporarily alter Lysithea's biochemistry with a specialized treatment that would mask her unique genetic markers, making her for a brief time undetectable to Kagran sensors specifically calibrated to locate her. The treatment will last approximately 72 hours, explained the medical specialist, a being with translucent skin through which complex cybernetic enhancements were visible. After that, your natural biology will reassert itself. 72 hours to reach the facility, warn them, and develop a countermeasure, Orion summarized. No pressure. There is one more thing, Valerian added. We've intercepted communications indicating that Emperor Drozax himself has joined the pursuit. His flagship entered this sector 12 hours ago. Lysithea felt a chill course through her multiple hearts. He would not leave Kagran space unless the situation was truly desperate. He fears we know too much. Or he fears losing you specifically, Orion suggested. If your genetics are as valuable as Rez indicated, then I remain a target regardless of our success against the void plague itself, Lysithea concluded. Valerian placed a massive mechanical hand on Lysithea's shoulder, the first time any being besides Orion had touched her since her escape. Then perhaps it is time for the princess to become something else entirely, something neither the Kagran nor the Vexillian authorities would recognize. Lysithea looked up at the towering figure, understanding dawning in her luminescent eyes. Transformation, she whispered. Not just of appearance, but of essence. The choice is yours, Valerian said solemnly. But choose quickly. The stars grow restless with the movements of warships. The process was unlike anything Lysithea had experienced in her carefully controlled royal existence. The collective's medical specialists surrounded her with technology that pulsed with sentient purpose, machines that seemed to understand her biology better than she did herself. This will not be permanent, the translucent medical specialist assured her, but it will fundamentally alter your biochemical signature for the duration. Orion watched from behind a protective barrier, concern evident in his expression. You're sure about this? Lysithea nodded, her feathered crest fanned, in resolve rather than fear. My entire life was predetermined by the genetics I now must conceal. There is a certain poetry to it. The procedure began with a luminous mist that enveloped her body, penetrating her iridescent skin and temporarily suppressing the specific genetic markers that made her both valuable to the Kagran and identifiable to their tracking systems. Pain flashed through her nervous system, sharp and clarifying as her royal biology fought against the enforced changes. Through the haze of discomfort, Lysithea reflected on the absurdity of her situation. From birth, she had been told her genetics made her special, elevated, destined to continue an unbroken royal lineage. Now, those same treasured attributes had become a liability that must be suppressed. When the procedure finished, she stood on unsteady legs before a reflective surface. Her appearance remained largely unchanged, the pearlescent skin, the feathered crest, but something fundamental had shifted. The subtle bioluminescence that had marked her as royal since birth had dimmed to almost nothing. "How do you feel?" Orion asked, approaching now that the protective barriers had been lowered. "Like myself," Lysithea replied with surprise, yet unburdened, as though I've set down something I never realized I was carrying. Valerian entered with purpose in their mechanical stride. The decoy drones are prepared for launch. Each carries a synthesized signature that will mimic your genetic pattern, enough to confuse the Kagran tracking systems. "And our vessel?" Orion inquired. "Reprogrammed with collective protocols. It will register as a routine maintenance craft, beneath notice." Valerian turned to Lysithea. "We've received intelligence that must be shared. Your people have begun mobilizing their fleet, Princess. The official declaration claims they are responding to human aggression and kidnapping you." Lysithea's crest flattened against her head. "War between our peoples based on a lie." "Not yet war," Valerian clarified, "but the precipice of it, which makes your mission to the research facility all the more urgent." Within hours, they were underway. The decoy drones launched in a spectacular display, each broadcasting a distinct yet convincing copy of Lysithea's genetic signature. As predicted, the Kagran pursuit vessels immediately divided their attention, scrambling to follow what they believed might be their quarry. The Obsidian Whisper, now registered as the maintenance vessel routine inspection, slipped away in the confusion. Orion guided the responsive craft with increasing confidence, having adapted to its unique control interface. Amazing how quickly they took the bait, Orion observed as they monitored the scattered Kagran ships on long-range sensors. "Desperation," Lysithea replied. "Drozax knows what's at stake. The Void Plague would give the Kagran dominance over species that have long surpassed them technologically. Their journey to the research facility would take approximately 60 hours, well within the window provided by Lysithea's temporary genetic masking. Yet as they traveled deeper into the sparse, rarely patrolled region between galactic arms, a new concern emerged. Long-range sensors detecting a vessel on intercept course, Orion announced, studying the readouts with growing concern. Not Kagran design, not collective either. The approaching ship was massive, dwarfing their shuttle and moving with impossible speed for its size. Before they could take evasive action, a tractor beam locked onto their vessel, arresting their momentum with shocking precision. "We're being hailed," Orion said, hand hovering over the communication controls. "Answer it," Lysithea instructed, straightening her posture instinctively. Royal training never quite faded, even in crisis. The view screen activated to reveal a face that made Lysithea's heart stutter in their rhythm. The being before them had the same pearlescent skin as her own, the same structure to their features. But where her crest was azure, theirs was a deep crimson that signified a different royal bloodline. "Cousin Merivian," Lysithea whispered, recognizing the commander of the Vexillian Special Operations Division, a section of their military that officially did not exist. "Lysithea," the regal figure acknowledged with a slight inclination of their head. "Or should I say the mysteriously transformed Princess Lysithea. Our sensors detected your shuttle's energy signature, but your biological readings are..." Most unusual. How did you find us? Orion demanded. Merivian's attention shifted to the human, expression unreadable. The Hephaestus Collective maintains its neutrality through sharing information with all major powers. They informed us of unusual activity in their territory, as required by treaty. They betrayed us, Orion concluded. No, Lysithea corrected. They followed protocol while helping us escape. They knew my cousin would be watching. Merivian's crimson crest rippled in what might have been approval. You always were the quickest of our generation, Lysithea. Now I believe we have much to discuss regarding Emperor Drozax, genetic harvesting, and a certain ancient plague. The revelation stunned both Orion and Lysithea into momentary silence. You know? Lysithea finally managed. Our intelligence division has suspected for decades. What we lacked was proof, and a royal willing to defy tradition to prevent catastrophe. Merivian's expression softened slightly. Your escape was convenient for certain factions within our government that have long opposed the alliance with the Kagran. Understanding dawned on Lysithea. I was not just fleeing a marriage, I was becoming a catalyst. Indeed, though your choice of accomplice, Merivian's gaze flicked toward Orion, was unexpected. Humans were not part of our projections. We're resourceful that way, Orion replied dryly. So it seems. Merivian straightened. All business once, more. You were bound for the Helix research station. We will escort you there. Combined with the data we've gathered on the Kagran bioweapons program, your genetic profile may be the key to neutralizing the threat entirely. Lysithea's crest raised in alarm. My genetic profile? But it's been masked, temporarily. Merivian finished for her. The Collective's technology is impressive but fundamentally designed to work with, rather than against your inherent biology. Your royal genetics will reassert themselves precisely because they are so exceptional. As they were brought aboard, Merivian's vessel, the Silent Sovereign, Lysithea felt the strangest sensation, a homecoming tinged with the knowledge she could never truly go home again. The ship's interior featured the familiar biomechanical architecture of Vexillian design, yet the crew regarded her with a mix of reverence and uncertainty. She was both royal and renegade, a princess and a fugitive. Orion stayed close by her, sighed visibly uncomfortable amid the alien splendor, but refusing to be separated from her. His presence, solid, practical, and undeniably human, had become her anchor in a universe that seemed increasingly complex. Your human companion will be granted diplomatic status, Merivian informed her as they were led to a private chamber. Our official position is that he rescued you from Kagran operatives who had infiltrated your wedding ceremony. Rewriting history to suit present needs, Lysithea observed. How very Vexillian of you. Politics is the art of narrative control, cousin, Merivian replied without shame. Had you not fled, you would have learned this lesson as sovereign matriarch. The mention of her abandoned future sent an unexpected pang through Lysithea's hearts. Not regret precisely, but acknowledgement of paths not taken. The Helix research station, Orion interjected, bringing focus back to their mission. What exactly are we going to find there? Merivian's crimson crest shifted in a pattern that Lysithea recognized as indicating classified information. The station was established 3 centuries ago, after the last outbreak of the Void Plague. It houses the combined research of 17 species who survived that catastrophe. Their work continues in absolute secrecy, funded by a consortium of governments who understand that some threats transcend political boundaries. Including the Vexillian sovereignty? Lysithea asked. Including certain elements within the sovereignty, Merivian corrected carefully. Your mother among them. This revelation struck Lysithea like a physical blow. My mother knew? About the Kagran's plans? She suspected, which is why she arranged your betrothal to Drozax while simultaneously supporting the research that might ultimately thwart him. Merivian's expression betrayed genuine sadness. The calculations of rulership are often cruel, cousin. She gambled your personal happiness against the survival of billions. Orion's hand found Lysithia's, fingers intertwining in a gesture that would have been scandalous in the royal court, but now felt like the only certainty in her world. "We're changing the equation," Orion stated firmly. "There has to be a solution that doesn't require sacrificing Lysithea." Merivian studied their joined hands with fascination rather than disapproval. "Perhaps. That is what we must discover at Helix Station." The journey to the research facility took less than a day aboard the advanced Vexillian vessel. As they approached, it became clear why the station had remained hidden for centuries. It existed in a pocket of disrupted space-time, visible only when approached from precisely the right vector, with precisely the right navigational calculations. "Dimensional camouflage," Lysithea breathed, watching as the massive structure phased into existence before them. "I thought such technology was theoretical." "Many things believed impossible become necessary when facing extinction," Merivian replied. The station itself defied conventional architectural understanding. Parts of it seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, structures overlapping and passing through each other in ways that should have been physically impossible. Its core, however, was surprisingly conventional, a massive sphere of what appeared to be actual glass, within which countless lights moved in coordinated patterns. As they docked, an honor guard of beings representing multiple species awaited them. At their center stood a figure that caused both Merivian and Lysithea to bow instinctively. "Sovereign Matriarch," Merivian acknowledged formally. Lysithea's mother, resplendent in understated royal attire, her azure crest a more vibrant version of Lysithea's own, stepped forward with grace that belied the gravity of the situation. "Rise, daughter," she commanded, her triple-toned voice carrying the weight of generations. "We have little time for formalities. The Kagran fleet approaches, and with it, the potential end of peace in our quadrant." The sovereign matriarch's gaze shifted to Orion, who stood awkwardly, unsure of proper protocol. "And you must be the human who altered the course of history by offering refuge to my daughter." Her expression revealed nothing of her thoughts on this development. "Unconventional but effective. Follow me, both of you. The consortium awaits." They were led deeper into the impossible structure of Helix Station, through corridors that seemed to fold back on themselves and chambers that expanded far beyond their external dimensions. Finally, they entered a vast circular room where representatives of species Lysithea had only read about in ancient texts sat in solemn council. "The situation is grave," announced a being composed primarily of crystalline structures. "Kagran, forces have deployed what our sensors confirm to be delivery systems for biological agents. They approach not only this facility but major population centers throughout the quadrant. They're going to release the void plague," Lysithea realized, aloud. "Even without my genetic material to protect their own population." "Desperation," her mother explained. "Drozax knows we've discovered his plan. He would rather deploy an imperfect weapon than risk losing his advantage entirely." "How do we stop them?" Orion asked, practical as always. A holographic display activated, showing the complex molecular structure of what must be the void plague pathogen. Beside it appeared a second structure, one that Lysithea recognized from her scientific education. "That's my genetic sequence," she said softly. "The specific immunity marker." "Indeed," confirmed a consortium scientist, "their species unrecognizable to Lysithea. Your bloodline carries a unique protein structure that neutralizes the void plague pathogen on contact. We've been attempting to synthesize it for centuries without success. Which is why the Kagran wanted you," Orion concluded, "not just for immunity, but for the ability to control who receives it." The sovereign matriarch stepped forward. "What they failed to understand is that the immunity cannot be extracted or transferred. It must be freely given, a quirk of our biology that evolved specifically in response to the plague." "Freely given?" Lysithea's crest raised in confusion. "What does that mean?" "It means," her mother said with unexpected gentleness, "that only when a Vexillian royal consciously chooses to share their essence, through a process similar to our ancestral bonding ritual, Can the immunity be passed to another being or synthesized for distribution? Understanding dawned on Lysithea. That's why the arranged marriage. Drozax needed me to willingly bond with him, thinking it was for political alliance, while actually harvesting the activated immunity proteins, Merivian added grimly. A process that would have left you depleted and eventually killed you, as it did his previous spouses. Lysithea turned to her mother, a lifetime of questions in her gaze. You knew this when you arranged my betrothal. You were using me as bait to confirm the Kagran plot. I was using you as the key to salvation, the sovereign matriarch corrected, emotion finally breaking through her royal facade. I needed you to make exactly the choice you did, to flee, to find allies, to bring us here with the Kagran in pursuit and their plans exposed. A bitter laugh escaped Lysithea. So my rebellion was itself part of your plan. Not entirely, her mother admitted. The human variable was unexpected. She glanced at Orion, but fortuitous. Their reputation for adaptability and unorthodox problem-solving is well-earned. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. On the holographic display, dozens of Kagran warships appeared, surrounding the Helix station in a formation that left no avenue of escape. They've found us, the crystalline being announced unnecessarily, and they've deployed plague delivery systems, impact in 30 minutes. We need a solution now, Orion insisted, turning to Lysithea and her mother. This immunity transfer, how? Does it work? Can we weaponize it against the plague itself? The sovereign matriarch's crest flattened in resignation. Theoretically, yes. But the process requires a living vector. A royal who willingly bonds their essence with the delivery mechanism. It would mean certain death for the royal involved. No, Orion said immediately, stepping closer to Lysithea. There has to be another way. The procedure would require extracting and amplifying her royal essence. The sovereign matriarch continued as if Orion hadn't spoken. Distributing it through the station's dimensional transmission array could neutralize the plague across multiple sectors simultaneously. Lysithea stood perfectly still, her royal training enabling her to process the situation with clarity despite the emotional turmoil. Her entire life had been leading to this moment, not a political marriage, but a sacrifice of an entirely different nature. I'll do it, she said quietly. Lysithea, no. Orion grasped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. You escaped one death sentence only to volunteer for another? There must be alternatives. The consortium scientists exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. There is a theoretical possibility, ventured the crystalline being. The immunity transfer requires a royal essence, yes, but the process of bonding could potentially distribute the strain across multiple participants. The sovereign matriarch's crest raised in alarm. You suggest diluting the royal essence with non-Vexillian biology? It's never been attempted. The compatibility issues alone could be overcome, interrupted another scientist, particularly if one participant possessed exceptional adaptability at the cellular level. All eyes turned to Orion. Human physiology, the scientist continued, is remarkably plastic compared to most species. Their bodies adapt to environmental pressures at rates that defy conventional evolutionary understanding. Lysithea looked at Orion with new understanding. That's why you could see me through the phase shifter. Why you adapted so quickly to different gravity conditions, different atmospheres. No, just human stuff. Orion shrugged, uncomfortable with the sudden scientific scrutiny. We're good at surviving where we shouldn't. More than that, the sovereign matriarch said thoughtfully. You might be capable of serving as a stabilizing element in the bonding process, allowing Lysithea to transfer her immunity without fatal consequences. A bonding, Lysithea repeated, the full implications dawning on her. In Vexillian culture, the bonding ritual was sacred, the joining of essences that traditionally occurred only between carefully matched royals to continue the purity of their lineage. It would be permanent, her mother warned. Your essences would be irrevocably intertwined. Neither fully Vexillian nor human, but something new. Orion's eyes never left Lysithia's. "I'm in if you are, Princess." Another alarm sounded. 20 minutes until plague deployment, announced the station's automated system. "Prepare the dimensional array," ordered the sovereign matriarch. "If we're attempting this madness, we'll need every second." The preparations moved with frantic efficiency. Lysithia and Orion were led to the central chamber of the station, the glass sphere they had observed from space. Here, surrounded by technology beyond even Vexillian understanding, they would attempt something never before imagined. A cross-species royal bonding to save billions of lives. "The process will be painful," warned the lead scientist as they connected delicate sensors to both Lysithia's and Orion's bodies. "Your physiologies will resist before they harmonize. Human history is full of people doing painful things for the right reasons," Orion said with forced lightness. Then more seriously to Lysithia, "You sure about this? It's a lot more permanent than running away from a wedding." Lysithia's feathered crest rippled with emotion she no longer tried to suppress. "I've spent my life defined by my genetics, by what my royal essence could do for political alliances. Perhaps this is what it was truly meant for." They stood facing each other within a circle of pulsing energy. Around them, the dimensional array hummed with power, ready to broadcast the neutralizing agent created by their bonding across light years of space. "Commencing sequence," announced the lead scientist. "Bond initiates will experience cellular restructuring in 3, 2, 1. Pain unlike anything Lysithia had ever known coursed through her body as the essence that made her royal. The very thing that had defined her existence began to separate from her physical form. She heard Orion cry out as well, his human physiology experiencing sensations it was never designed to process. Through the agony, their hands found each other, fingers intertwining as they had aboard Merivian's ship. The contact created a circuit, and suddenly the pain transformed into something else, a kaleidoscopic awareness of each other at the molecular level. Lysithia could feel Orion's essence, remarkably complex, stubbornly resilient, fundamentally kind. She sensed his memories. Childhood on a Mars colony, the loss of his parents to a terraforming accident, his decision to seek freedom among the stars rather than safety on Earth, and Orion experienced her in turn. The weight of royal expectations, the loneliness of elevated status, the moment of desperate courage when she activated the phase shifter and chose uncertainty over predestined misery. "Energy harmonization achieved," came a distant voice. "Cellular integration proceeding at unprecedented rates." As their essences merged, something unexpected happened. Rather than Lysithia's royal genetics simply transferring to Orion, or his human adaptability merely supporting her survival, their combined essence created something entirely new, a molecular structure that contained the Vexillian immunity, but enhanced by human adaptability, capable of evolving against any future mutation of the plague. "Dimensional broadcast commencing," the scientist announced, voice filled with wonder. "Neutralizing agent deploying system-wide." On the monitoring screens, the approaching K-Gran bioweapons flickered and then went inert as the neutralizing agent reached them, rendered harmless before they could deploy their deadly cargo. Within the energy circle, Lysithia and Orion remained connected, physically, genetically, essentially. The pain had subsided, replaced by an awareness of each other that transcended conventional understanding. Not quite telepathy, but a fundamental knowledge of the other's being. When the process finally completed, they stood changed. Lysithia's pearlescent skin now held a warmer hue, while Orion's human complexion had acquired a subtle iridescence, neither fully what they had been, yet wholly themselves. "Neutralization complete," confirmed the head scientist. "The void plague has been rendered inert across all monitored sectors." The sovereign matriarch approached her transformed daughter with reverence rather than royal authority. "The bond you've created, it's unprecedented. Our scientists will study its implications for generations." "And politically?" Lysithia asked, still holding Orion's hand, unwilling to break the physical connection that mirrored their deeper bond. Unprecedented as well, Merivian answered, joining them. A human Vexillian, bonded pair with diplomatic status in both realms. The Kagran Empire has been exposed, their bioweapon neutralized, their invasion fleet surrounded by combined human and Vexillian forces. So what happens now? Orion asked, the practical human in him still focused on next steps despite the profound transformation he'd undergone. The sovereign matriarch's expression softened in a way Lysithea had rarely witnessed. That for the first time in your life, daughter, is entirely up to you. Lysithea looked at Orion, this human who had helped her escape, who had stood by her side through impossible dangers, who was now irrevocably part of her. In his eyes, she saw not the reverence of a subject or the calculation of a political ally, but something she had never experienced in the royal courts of Vexillion, simple acceptance. We go where we're needed, she decided, speaking for them both with the certainty that came from their bond. The immunity we carry together is too valuable to hoard for political advantage, and too dangerous to entrust to any single government. Independent agents, Orion added with a grin, offering protection to those who need it, not those who can afford it. The sovereign matriarch studied them thoughtfully. Rebels to the end, though I suppose that's how progress always begins. She straightened once again every inch the ruler. The sovereignty will provide you with a vessel, one with certain capabilities beyond standard technology. Merivian stepped forward, offering a data crystal, coordinates to worlds where void plague remnants have been detected, places where your unique abilities could prevent future outbreaks. As they prepared to depart Helix Station, now permanently revealed to the major powers and established as a neutral research facility under consortium protection, Lysithea took a final moment with her mother. Was this truly your plan all along? She asked. For me to find another path? The sovereign matriarch's triple-toned voice carried genuine emotion. My plan was for you to survive, and for our people to survive with you. The form that took. She glanced at Orion, who was discussing flight preparations with Merivian. I could not have imagined, but perhaps that's the lesson for both our species. The future will not be determined by carefully arranged political marriages or genetic engineering programs, but by unexpected connections, Lysithea finished, understanding at last. Their new vessel, christened Dual Essence, departed Helix Station 3 days later. Designed with both Vexillian and human ergonomics in mind, it represented the first of many collaborations between species that had nearly gone to war. As they prepared to enter slipspace, Orion looked at Lysithea, his co-pilot, his bonded partner, his princess who had chosen freedom over duty only to discover a different kind of purpose. Any regrets? He asked, genuinely curious. Their bond allowed emotions to flow between them, but thoughts remained their own. Lysithea's feathered crest rippled in what Orion now recognized as contentment. I escaped an arranged marriage right into a human's arms, she said with unexpected humor, and somehow found exactly where I belong. Together, they activated the slipspace drive, their joined hands initiating the sequence that would carry them to worlds in need, no longer defined by royal genetics or human limitations, but by the choice they had made to become something greater, together than either could have been alone. Behind them, Vexillian and human fleets established the first joint patrol routes. Before them lay star systems where their unique bond would bring healing rather than conquest. And between them flowed an essence that was neither fully alien nor human, but a promise of what might be possible when ancient barriers finally fell. The dual essence vanished into slipspace, carrying with it a future none had imagined but many would soon come to cherish. A future where an alien princess who escaped an arranged marriage found not just refuge, but purpose and belonging in a human's arms.